Don't cross the streams.
Why?
It would be bad.
I'm fuzzy on the whole good-bad thing. What do you mean bad?
Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and over the past few decades, maybe a little bit longer, we've definitely seen a rise in objectivism and nihilism as far as our entertainment. And it feels like maybe corporations are taking it a bit too far. We've got a few examples that we're going to talk about that with my good friend Mark Pellegrini, comic book writer. I think he got some short stories and novels out there too. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing good.
So one of the biggest examples I've seen recently is one of the biggest blockbuster movies of all time. When I watched Avengers Infinity War, Thanos essentially wants to commit genocide on a large scale, pretty enormous scale, 50% of all life like in the galaxy. In the movie, he's very much portrayed, and I interpreted him as the protagonist, like he's supposed to be sympathetic. No one ever challenges him. There's one line from Doctor Strange, I believe, but none of the heroes ever tell him he's crazy. When he sacrifices his daughter, he sheds a tear. It feels like he's making an enormous sacrifice for what he thinks is the greater good. When you compare that to the source material, he's absolutely insane. He's trying to court death, who's kind of a figment of his imagination, and ruthlessly just kills everybody. And it's something I'm noticing as well. The Thanos thing really stood out to me.
You see, I don't know whether to call it the Che Guevara effect or the Ozymandias effect. I mean, we're talking comics, so maybe the Ozymandias effect is more appropriate. But it was taking a mass murdering tyrant and trying to humanize them and, in a way, justify, like, no, you just need to see it from their side of the story. Look at it from their perspective, and then you'll realize.
Overpopulated. Yeah. We got to wipe out half the world, or half the galaxy indiscriminately.
It's the original Infinity Gauntlet comic did not portray it in any way whatsoever as, a misunderstanding. You're just not looking at it from his perspective, or, oh, he has the right idea. He's just going about it the wrong way, which is how, the movies portray it. The movies
and the heroes in Infinity Gauntlet are quite certain that what he is doing is evil, and they have to stop it at any cost possible.
Right. I mean, even that great scene where Captain America stands up to him, even though he's basically standing up to a god who could blink him out of existence in the blink of an eye. Whereas in the Infinity Gauntlet, the two movies, Infinity War and Endgame, it's basically they're trying to stop him because they don't want, the people they know to die, but they never directly address what you are doing is wrong. It's more like, we're stopping you because this will hurt us, not because you have the wrong idea, but because you're going about it the wrong way. It's like Watchmen is a great comic, but in a way it kind of ruined every comic that's ever been written after it because everybody wants to do that. Yeah, I watched that one. It was you and Perch, right? Or
yeah,
it was a great video. And that's the problem, is that the whole ending of Watchmen with Ozymandias is that all the heroes except Rorschach have that epiphany, like, well, he's kind of right if we look at it from his perspective, and we can't stop him, so we might as well just let this one go.
It's going to bring about world peace and an end to the nuclear standoff between the Russia or USSR at the time in America.
Right, and so that idea of taking a mass murder and
ends justify the means.
Exactly, and that's become such a popular thing to do with villains now. But it goes a lot deeper than that. Not just the whole Thanos, Ozymandias kind of thing of justifying a mass murderer. A lot of it just comes down to, I think, the personal egos, not just of the creators making the media, writing it, drawing it, whatever, but also the target demographic they intend to sell the media to, the consumers. Like, who would buy this? Who would go and buy a ticket to Cruella or Maleficent or buy it on Blu-ray? And so Cruella, the plot of that new Disney movie, the live-action prequel to 101 Dalmatians, the entire origin story of Cruella is designed to justify her kidnapping, murdering, skinning, and wearing puppies. And that's something that I think sensible human being could ever see as justified, but you just go and type up Cruella movie reviews, and it's just everybody is gushing. All the corporate media reviewers are all gushing about how great it is. You go into Reddit, and they love the movie. Everyone just like, oh, this movie's great. You know, girl power.
Why did she stop at 101 Dalmatians? She should have killed 1,000 Dalmatians.
You know, yeah, some bad stuff happened to her when she was a kid. Yeah, Dalmatians killed her parents, but that doesn't justify stealing somebody else's puppies and slaughtering them and wearing their flesh as fashion. Maleficent, the Angelina Jolie movie from a few years ago. I think did they even make a sequel, or that's still in production?
I believe that's still in production.
Yeah, that one was the origin story of Maleficent, the villain from Sleeping Beauty. And the whole thing with her was that, oh, my boyfriend betrayed me when I was a teenager and cut off my wings, so now I'm an evil witch who's actually the good guy who puts an entire kingdom to sleep. Like you're justifying doing something really evil, and even if it's a fairy tale evil, you know, if you look at it, she didn't kill anybody, but guess what? You know, she Rip Van Winkled them. They're going to wake up 1,000 years in the future with all their friends and family who lived outside the kingdom being dead and completely being fish out of water. So, I mean, she still ruined everybody's lives, but it's okay because her boyfriend betrayed her when she was a teenager, so she has a sob story. And
I remember that happened something similar in Frozen. When I don't remember exactly the movie, but I had to watch it because some of the cousins were over. I remember going, This hero is a really bad person. Like, their motivation is kind of evil.
You can tell that you can pinpoint the rewrites on Frozen where Elsa, because the original tale of Anna and the Snow Queen's the bad guy, and the original early drafts, multiple drafts of Frozen, Elsa was the villain. And so you can tell exactly in that movie where they realize, no, Elsa has this really great song that's really catchy, and if you listen to the lyrics of that song, it's terrible advice. It's all about let it go, don't care about anything, just only care about yourself, you do you, that kind of like terrible egocentric advice. But it was a pop hit, so they rewrote Elsa's character and the narrative around that song, which is why the movie really doesn't hang together. It's why that one character, Hans, who is the love interest, is just suddenly the bad guy at the end, just out of the blue, and it's terrible. But it's because they realized they created a character in a song that was too likable, so they you know,
I remember
thinking, and malformed the story around it.
How is this the hero? This is weird.
Right? She's not. She's the one who decides to go off into the wilderness and only care about herself, but in doing so, she's destroying her kingdom and everybody in it, and people are freezing to death.
Freezing everybody to death.
Yeah, but somehow she just misunderstood. She just wants to be happy. She accidentally hurt her sister when she was a kid. That's her tragic backstory, so now it's okay that she's doing this. And there's so much media like that. I mean, I can rattle off. Did you see
A Quiet Place?
The original Quiet Place?
Yes.
Or Quiet Place 2?
No, the first one.
I've seen the first one, yeah. That's where they all go off in that farm.
The daughter is the biggest villain in the movie. She literally is responsible for her brother and her father's death.
Right. There's a lot wrong with that movie. As much as I enjoyed the premise of A Quiet Place, it pulls a Signs at the end where it's like, oh, so the resolution is something so obvious and so stupid that absolutely nobody in the world ever thought of it. Yeah, A Quiet Place has lots of problems, and that's one of them. But the problem is that, the daughter is... She messes up and she causes so many problems in that movie, but none of the characters address it, and that's what gets so frustrating.
Her on it.
No one ever calls them out, and there's so much media like that where in order for the narrative within the story to justify these characters being awful, they just don't address the fact that they're awful, or everybody pretends like what they did is okay. And I mean, I'm just going to rattle off a bunch right now. They're all recent stuff. Gravity Falls. Mabel is upset in the last season that Dipper is going to go off with his uncle, his cool uncle voiced by J.K. Simmons, who's a paranormal investigator, and Dipper is going to follow his dreams from the very first episode and become a paranormal investigator and study under his mentor. But Mabel doesn't like that because she doesn't want to be separated from Dipper because they're twins. So she basically starts Armageddon in their town and nearly destroys the whole world. And after all that's resolved, everybody apologizes to Mabel. Like, we're sorry, Mabel. And Dipper's like, I shouldn't have gone to follow my dreams. I should stay here with you and do whatever you want. Yay, I'm so glad you've gone through this character arc, Dipper, and now you're a better person. And that's how this series ends. Was
that the Twilight Zone where they have the kid in the house and the visitors show up and everybody has to do exactly what he wants?
Yes, it is that episode, A Good Life with Billy Mooney, and that's exactly what that felt like. It's like, why is everybody just like kneeling to this character when she's awful? Like, are they afraid of her? What's going on? There's another show, Star versus the Forces of Evil. In the series finale, the main protagonist, Star Butterfly, who's a magical princess from another dimension who's living on Earth and going to high school, she realizes that the balances between reality and magic are all messed up, and the magic world is screwing with the real world. So she does a spell that commits mass genocide and destroys every single magical creature in the multiverse, kills them, like just disintegrates them, even the good ones, even the good magical creatures that were recurring characters in earlier seasons. Like they even showed some of them having like wives and family and kids, and she killed all of them. And after she kills all of them, all the other characters like, you did the right thing, Star. You did what had to be done. You're the hero, Star. And they give her all this emotional affirmation, when if you're just watching the show, you're like, wait, no, that's not right. That's not good. Why are you justifying her committing genocide? That's wrong. And it's funny because I say genocide, and there's a lot of these cartoons that are being made right now where a villain commits genocide, but then every character tells them it's okay. You have a sob story. So like in the Netflix She-Ra series, Catra is upset because Adora, She-Ra, won't date her because she's a lesbian. And Adora is like, I don't know, bisexual or just not ready yet. So Catra goes like nuts and tries to unravel the fabric of reality, and everybody in Etheria actually ceases to exist. She kills everybody, and they manage to undo it and bring them all back. But imagine the emotional trauma of dying and coming back to life, and everybody in the world. And then everybody apologizes to Catra, and then Catra and Adora hook up, and they become lesbian lovers. But it's okay because Catra and Adora are lesbians, and they're
clearly
happy
that
together.
she was madly in love with her.
Yep.
She almost destroyed the entire world.
I mean, well, she did destroy the entire world. They were just able to hit the reset button.
You ever see the Mike Tyson Robin Givens interview? When she said, the first time Mike ever punched me, I knew that he loved me.
I've heard that. I always thought that
weird.
was a joke. It is so weird.
She said it for real.
That reminds me. I'm going to use another
healthy.
example of. Yeah, I mean, one of the examples, the big one that's everybody I'm sure thought of immediately is Harley Quinn. Before I get to her, there's one more genocide that's justified in kids' cartoons that I want to bring up. Steven Universe. You have these characters called the Crystal Gems, who are like the alien goddesses in that universe, and they go and they colonize other planets, and they wipe out the population on those planets, and they go to war with each other. Something about like the diamonds, fighting each other and hating each other, and they commit mass genocide on each other. And it's always framed as being okay because they're doing what must be done, or like, oh no, you see, they represent allegorically the letters of LGBTQ+, so you can't get mad at them because they're these different minorities or something, or like, oh no, Pearl is in love with Pink Diamond, so it's okay because she knows love, so it's okay if she commits genocide because she understands love. And like, no, what she's killing like countless people. There's nothing that justifies that, but the narrative jumps through these logistic hoops to justify genocide. And I just listed 3 examples in kids' cartoons in a row of the heroes justifying genocide because of reasons. And why is that the new trend in kids' cartoons today? It's just because there's a demographic of people out there who are awful, terrible people, and they're looking for anything that gives them affirmation that what they're doing is okay. And it could be anything. It could be, a mom who wants to get drunk and slap her kids around, goes to Walmart and finds a t-shirt that says, "Don't bother mommy when it's wine o'clock." Like, that's it. That's for me. That's me. So she can wear that t-shirt. Like, this shirt justifies my behavior. Or those like someone who, an awful person who goes to like a Chili's or a restaurant and is just terrible to the waiter and wants to see their manager and wants to get them fired because they brought them a Diet Coke instead of a regular Coke or something, and just goes absolutely into a shrieking fit. But that's okay because they went to Barnes & Noble and they found a wood-burn plaque that said, "If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best." Like, they're looking for absolutely anything just to justify being a terrible person. But
you can't call them a Karen.
That's a slur now, apparently.
Prick.
Yeah, I think the ACLU has declared that as a slur now. But the point is that like that's I think corporations have realized that that's a target demographic they haven't gone for yet that is very profitable and very lucrative. And so that's why we keep seeing all these narrative and all these terrible characters like modern day Harley Quinn, who's very different from 90s Harley Quinn. 90s Harley Quinn in Batman the Animated Series would do irredeemable, unjustifiable things where she was constantly attempting to murder people. Like, there's an episode I think it's Joker's favor, where she uses knockout gas during a police banquet to knock out all the police officers, including like Harvey Bullock and Renee Montoya, except James Gordon, who she like uses some sort of thing to paralyze his body, but he's awake. And then she sets a bomb in front of him, like that's slowly ticking down that he has to stare at. And she does this all by herself. Joker like planned it, but she's the one executing it, and she's enjoying it. Like she is attempting to murder an entire room full of people, and she's loving it. Like, this is a irredeemable person. Even when they got to her origin story about how the Joker manipulated her and messed with her in the past, she's still trying constantly to kill people and enjoying it. You can't justify that. And so even in like the end of her story in the DCAU, which was Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, you know, like she does some terrible things in that. She kidnaps Tim Drake. She brainwashes him. She tries to turn him into what she views as the perfect son, which is kind of a weird like mini Joker. But she ends up getting like knocked into a pit and disappearing. And we see her at the end of the movie during like the epilogue. We find that she survived and she's an old lady, but she still gets her comeuppance because what she wanted was the perfect son. That's an obedient little mini Joker. What she got was like the world's worst granddaughters, the two Dee-Dees, who disrespect her and break her heart and treat her like garbage. So she still got her comeuppance. She didn't get what she wanted. She didn't get to marry the Joker. She didn't get the perfect son. She ended up with a crappy life with two terrible granddaughters. So the idea that she can be a terrible person and still get everything she wants because she has a tragic backstory, they didn't pull that crap in the 90s with her. Now, though, like, wasn't there a new
Batman constantly?
Yeah, wasn't there a New 52 story? And I don't know if New 52 is even canon anymore after Rebirth, but wasn't there a story where she planted bombs and Christmas presents and blew up a bunch of kids on Christmas Day? But everyone's like, oh, the Joker made her do it, so it's not her fault. She's not justifiable. That's like saying the Manson family is not responsible because Charles Manson made them kill Sharon Tate. You know, that's just this awful, like, you read that.
She has no agency over her own actions.
Right? You know, you would think that agency would be a popular thing for people who want strong, specifically independent female characters. Independence means agency, but they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want the strong, independent female character in general.
They want the empowerment, but they don't want the responsibility of the actions.
Right? Because agency leads to accountability, and accountability leads to consequences, and nobody wants that. At least not the people that these kinds of characters and this kind of media are made for. Because, like, I don't want to have agency. Then I could go to jail. No, I want to be justified in being a terrible, heinous piece of crap. And this is like, I want to say, like, this is one of the worst episodes of a cartoon I've ever seen, and it had the worst moral I've ever seen. It's this TV show that ended recently called OKKO, and it was on Cartoon Network, and it was created by the boyfriend of Rebecca Sugar, who is the creator of Steven Universe. So it's in that same vein as Steven Universe. And the episode's called You Get Me. So in Steven Universe, not Steven Universe, in OKKO, the plot is that there are these characters who are all like anime and video game parodies, and they operate like a quick stop mini mart in a strip mall. And the premise sounds like it should be really funny. It's just that the characters are terrible. And one of them, who's like the Chun-Li XP, her name is Enid. And she's constantly throughout the show being shown to just be an awful person. Like when she's supposed to run the cash register, but when people come up to buy things, she puts on her headphones and ignores them, or she puts up a next lane line when there's no other next lane. She talks back to people. She's really rude for no reason. She's awful. But all the characters drop to their knees and worship her like she's great. Like, oh, Enid, you're just so cool. It's so cool the way you talk back to people, the way you treat everyone like garbage, the way you don't do your job, the way you're lazy and terrible. And she's like, yeah, I am the coolest. And there's this episode called You Get Me, which you think would be the episode that teaches kids not to be an Enid, because Enid's basically Squidward. And how many episodes of SpongeBob point out that Squidward's a terrible employee and maybe you shouldn't try to be like him? Well, the episode is that she's really rude to a customer who turns out to be a wizard, and the wizard turns her to stone and as retaliation. So the main kid, KO, has to go get the wizard to undo the spell. But at the end of the episode, when the wizard undoes the spell, you think that would be the moment, right, where Enid realizes, like, you know, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have, you know, been so rude, and like, she learns a lesson or something. Nope. They beat up the wizard, and everyone apologizes to Enid, and Enid basically says, like, thanks, KO. You see, you get me. And that's the moral of the episode. The moral of the episode is that you can be a terrible person, a terrible employee, just awful to everyone around you and mistreat them. And if they ever get upset, that's just because they don't get you. That's the moral of that episode. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen on like kids television. Like that's the moral that they're giving to kids.
They replaced civics with social studies several decades ago. And civics was all about being a good citizen and
being civil,
how you treat your neighbor, and codes of conduct and stuff like that. But we've kind of sucked it all out of there. And it's a weird generation.
It is. It's a very egocentric generation. I kind of wonder.
I think everybody under a certain age thinks that they're a star in their own reality TV show.
That's actually a good description. I think the cameras are always on them. That's why they're always quippy and nasty. They all want to talk like they're in an episode of Friends or something. When it's like, how about you just be nice? Is that really so hard? Like, oh, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best, And that's like what that episode of OKKO boiled down to. That's become, the life philosophy for a lot of people. But because that catchphrase exists, because T-shirts that say "Don't bother mommy when it's wine o'clock," because these OKKO and Steven Universe cartoons and movies like Cruella and Maleficent exist, they exist to serve that population, that demographic, those customers who will pay money just for anything to justify the way they act. And just because
it serves to influence entire generations.
Yeah, to think that having that sort of self-centric attitude is okay. And of course, and they're like, oh, well, if it's okay, then, I learned this lesson. It's a kid's cartoon on Cartoon Network. It's supposed to be teaching me things, so I learned the right lesson. And just so people don't think I'm picking on female characters, there's a great episode of South Park that is about Randy. And it's the episode where Randy learns what alcoholism is. He finds out that alcoholism is a disease. And so he equates having alcoholism to having cancer or HIV. And that takes all agency out of his character. And he's just a drunken, sloppy wreck through the whole episode. But he keeps acting like he's like a cancer victim. He's like, it's not my fault. Alcoholism's a disease. I have no control over it. I can't help myself. And then he starts shotgunning beers left and right, acting like a college kid. And I mean, that episode of South Park, it's probably 10 years old now or more, but it at least had the wherewithal to know that, you're not supposed to idolize Randy. You're supposed to laugh at him. Like, he's wrong, to say that, alcohol. They even have a part where he's waiting in line to get anointed by, the blood from a religious statue, I think the Virgin Mary. And because he thinks that it'll have magical powers to cure his disease. And he's waiting in line with all these actual, debilitated people holding up IVs, and there's this one kid with cerebral palsy standing next to him, and he looks down at her and he's like, we are the same, she and I. that kind of attitude, all diseases are equal, alcoholism is equal to cerebral palsy, and this terrible thing, and you're supposed to laugh at how stupid Randy is and how awful this idea of justifying being a drunken piece of garbage just because alcoholism is a disease. That entire logic is just stupid. But that was 10, 12 years ago. Now, it's no longer a joke. Now we have things like She-Ra and Steven Universe and OKKO and Cruella and Harley Quinn and Maleficent, and I go on and on and on, that all try to justify being a terrible person because sob story. The whole reason that I thought I started thinking about this is because I just finished an anime called The Woman Called Fujiko Mine, which is a spin-off of the Lupin the Third franchise. And in that show, there's this villain, and anybody listening who hasn't watched that show, The Woman Called Fujiko Mine, I'm going to give spoilers, so just fair warning. If you don't want to know how the series ends, then take a break. But basically, we are led to believe that Fujiko's origin is that she was abused as a little girl in all the worst kinds of ways, that she was basically taken into a Black Widow kind of program and raised to be the perfect thief and the perfect spy and the perfect assassin, and she was beaten physically and emotionally in all sorts of ways and had her mind messed with. We find out at the end, though, that those were all MK Ultra style implanted memories from another character who's this emaciated old lady who was the one who was in charge of the program, who put hundreds of young girls kidnapped off the streets and put them through those same kinds of torture. But she did it because she was the original test subject, and she went through all of those tortures. So she passed that on to everybody else.
She had to do it. Everyone else should have to do it.
Yep. And at the end of the episode, after we get that old lady's sob story, that's where the episode could have gone in two directions. It could have gone the American way, where the sob story justifies murder and torture and all that, or it could have gone the Japanese way, and that's the way it went because it was an anime. And Fujiko basically says, like, nope, what you did was wrong. I don't care what your sob story is. So she pulls the old lady off life support, takes her to the beach on a beautiful day, and the old lady can't move because she's basically dying, sets her on the rock, and then goes out into the water and plays in the beach in the water in front of her, and basically taunts her. He's like, look at this beautiful world that you can't change, that you never got to experience. This beautiful world that you stole from so many others, all because you had a crappy childhood, a crappy life, because bad things happened to you. You'll never get to experience this wonder and this joy. And then the old lady closes her eyes and dies. And that's it. Her final moments were miserable because she spent a lifetime making other people miserable, and a sob story doesn't justify that. And like, that is a great ending, and that should be how all of these stories end. That should be how OKKO and Steven Universe and Maleficent and Cruella, that's how all those stories should end, but they don't, because they're not targeting morally just people. They're targeting pieces of crap who want to justify their awful behavior, and unfortunately, that's the kind of media we make now.
Yeah, and that media plays a big part in us moving steadier and steadier towards the future of Idiocracy, which was supposed to be a parody comic, but feels more and more like a prediction that will
one
be
day
here
at a time.
Not too distant future. It's crazy.
It's funny, just a tangent. They're building a new Costco here in Little Rock off Chenal, and I was sitting at the red light where the Costco is getting built at the intersection, and I could see a car in front of me, and I could see through the window there was this little old white couple in the car, and the little old lady who was in the passenger seat looked over and saw the Costco getting built, and just started like shrieking and celebrating within the car, and she like grabbed her husband's shoulders and started shaking, like, look, a Costco, a Costco. Like, it was the biggest deal in the whole world, and all I could think of was Idiocracy, where the Costco was like 10 miles like wide, 10 miles long, and it's this huge like Babylonian behemoth, this Temple of Babel kind of thing. Like, oh no, we're on our way.
Absolutely. I was waiting for Brondo to come in.
Yeah, Brondo's what plants need.
What's what plants needs. That's what you get at the water fountain and everything. And yeah, we got to do a conversation about like 2000 AD and Idiocracy and some of these parodies that have been so spot on. It's absolutely insane.
Is Blade Runner really that far away, anymore? The Japanese didn't conquer us like Blade Runner thought it would, but the Chinese sure did.
All right, Mark. Well, I do appreciate the conversation, and food for thought. I've noticed the same thing. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you can't help but notice it. It's in everything now.